Good, you? Welcome back to New Hampshire Vintage. My name is Wyatt,
And I'm Eric.
and today we're doing a part 3 on the Citation. Eric, what are we doing today?
Well, hopefully this will be the last part on this machine for a little while. We're gonna wrap up back seat situation. Hopefully get that put back together for the time being, and we're gonna address a couple items in the skid. We got a couple bogey wheels that are not feeling so great, so we're gonna go ahead and address those and hopefully get this thing wrapped up and maybe see some trail time with it.
Let's hope so. Let's get to it.
All right, so as you saw in a previous video, we got this seat taken off to fix the gas tank or replace the gas tank. So we got the seat off, and we actually went ahead and got the wood taken off from the underside of it. So the main issue with this seat is that the wood was getting pretty rotten. Most of the staples had all rotted out of the wood. The vinyl was starting to peel off around the edges. So the big issue was the wood, like I said. Secondary issue is the vinyl is starting to show its age. There's a couple cracks in it here and there. Overall, it's really not in terrible shape for the year. So I am going to get this reupholstered in the future. However, our snowmobile season looks like it might be coming to a close sooner than we hope. We got like 30s and 40s and rain coming in the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to hold off on getting this entirely reupholstered for the time being, just for the sake of getting it out and riding it. So what we're actually going to do is just go ahead and replace the wood that the seat attaches to and that attaches to the machine, so that we can have a decent surface to staple to, and that we have a decent surface to attach the seat to the machine and it doesn't move around or fly off the back. So we went ahead and took our old wood, traced it out onto our new wood. We cut that out. There's a little piece of wood here that goes on the back that the tail light screws into. So Wyatt went ahead and cut that out for me. Nothing crazy. This is a 2x3. This is just regular plywood. Should you use marine plywood or whatever? Yeah, maybe. But again, it's a vintage sled. You know, we're all here in the hopes of saving money and, you know, doing it on a dime. And this sled's really not going to see a lot of trail time. Therefore, really not going to get that wet. It's going to live inside. It has a chance to dry out. So whatever, call me a hack if you want. I'm just going to make it out of plywood for now. Maybe in the future, when I actually get the seat fully reupholstered, we'll go ahead and make this out of something, you know, more rugged and will last longer. But for now, this will do just fine. So to get this off, most of these staples were all pretty much rotted out anyway and broken off. But I did go through and take a pick or a small screwdriver and actually just pry out any of the remaining pieces of staples that were all through the vinyl here. If you're taking a seat cover off of an old seat like this and you have some like questionable vinyl that feels really stiff and rigid and you're worried about it breaking, a heat gun is your best friend. So I used a heat gun. I warmed up all this vinyl. I was able to, you know, slowly peel it out around the edges and get the wood out from under it. So once you get all of these staples out, once you have a nice piece of wood, we can move towards go ahead and affixing this to the bottom of the seat like this. So we're going to go ahead and kind of get this situated. We're going to attach this to the bottom here, and that's going to go right up into this pocket here, and then the tail light will go right on the back there, and it screws right through the vinyl. So I'm going to go ahead and screw this down, and then we'll flip this over and start working on getting it stapled. So we're going to clamp this on here just so I can get it in the right spot. I do have some lines traced out here, so we just got it clamped on there for the time being. And then I'm going to take this stapler, and I'm just going to put like just a couple of staples in there to hold it from moving. I'm going to go ahead and take this clamp off, and then I'm going to pre-drill a couple holes here. And we'll go ahead and screw some screws into it, just to make it nice and sturdy. Perfect. Beautiful. All right, so that's good and sturdy. That's not going anywhere. All it's doing is holding the taillight anyway, so not a big deal. We are going to go ahead and get this flipped upside down. We're going to put it on the seat, and we're going to get the heat gun out, and we'll start stretching some vinyl and hopefully start shooting some staples. All right, so I got my lovely assistant Wyatt here. We got our trusty heat gun. We have a little air stapler specifically for upholstery. This will make your life so much easier if you're doing a job like this or any kind of small upholstery in general. You definitely want to get an air-powered one. You'll be here for the rest of your life doing this by hand. It's super frustrating. Just get yourself an air-powered one. They're not that much money at Harbor Freight. The other big thing is you want to use stainless staples. If you use regular steel staples, the steel staples will rot out faster than you can blink, and you'll be down here doing it again in no time. So definitely use stainless staples, even if you're using regular wood. The wood will rot out, yes, eventually. But, I mean, you look at that other one. That one was probably original to the machine. And, you know, most of it's still there to be, you know, all things considered.
That was, what, 35 years ago?
Yeah, anyway. So, and that's assuming nobody's replaced it before. But most of the reason this was all coming undone was because of the staples rotting out and just not holding on to anything anymore. So, like I said, stainless staples and the heat gun. The heat gun will go a long way. It'll make you able to stretch this vinyl a lot easier without cracking it. And yeah, let's see if we can get this done. So we're going to just kind of work probably one corner at a time. I'll have Wyatt kind of push down on this while I kind of peel the vinyl up and over, and we'll shoot some staples. So you want to get this warm, but not so hot that the stuff starts to melt. It will help you a lot with the heat gun. So I would not recommend trying to do this without a heat gun. It will be really hard. So we'll get this really nice and warm on this corner, kind of nice and evenly, and then make sure to shut that off. Don't put it on anything flammable. And then Wyatt's going to push down on that. Oh yeah, this is going to be great. Go ahead and start there. It's already starting to cool down here in the corner. Ooh, there goes one. Careful I don't shoot you, Wyatt. All right. We got one corner done. Perfect. All right, not bad. We will move to the front here. And again, we're going to warm it up pretty good. All right, we got that good and warm. And you can kind of try and line up your old folds with your new piece of wood here. That way the seat kind of goes on the same way, if that makes sense. Or the vinyl goes onto the wood the same way. All right. And then we'll warm up the middle here, but we're going to move to another corner for the time being.
So my studio camera, as known as my iPhone, ended up cutting out a lot of the footage of us putting the seat on. Just to kind of give you guys a quick look. We did go all the way around. Everything's semi-even, which is good, especially with how this vinyl was. Just pretty much just take your time, heat it up. If it's a brand new cover, you want to start at a corner and work your way around, but since this one was already the shape that it was best for us to get all four corners and then work the middle. But you get the picture. Heat it up, staple it, and just take your time and work your way around.
Yep. And if you find yourself with like a big wrinkle or a bubble or something in it, again, heat is going to be your best friend to get that out. You can really, once it's warm, you can really stretch this stuff and pull out any kind of wrinkle or bubble that you may have formed. So like we worked our way from the corners in, so we ended up with like, you know, a little bit of excess material in the middle on like one or two parts, and we were able to just kind of heat it up and stretch it out and staple it down. So all in all, not too bad. We went ahead and got this tail light screwed on back here into that piece of support wood. We did forget to put the nutserts into the plywood here. Our original plan was to put some stainless nutserts in where the original mounting holes were, so that we could through bolt from the bottom of the tunnel into the bottom of the seat. We just kind of got ahead of ourselves and completely forgot to do it. So,
Too excited.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, we are going to get this thing reupholstered sometime, maybe the end of this winter, sometime over the summer. We'll see. So this is eventually going to come back apart, and in that case, we'll just put them in then. But for the time being, this thing's all stapled back together and looks halfway decent. So we're going to go ahead and get it affixed to the machine, and hopefully we should be all set. Yep.
So just a quick thing, what we're just doing right now is we're just cleaning up the tunnel a little bit. That's underneath the seat because the seat's off. Might as well do it. We're already here. And we're also just cleaning up the side of the tunnel. There's a lot of that yellow residue that a lot of the old gas leaked on to the side, on the top, just everywhere on this sled. So we're just trying to clean it up the best we can real fast before we get everything else bolted back up.
Make it look as nice as possible with as little work as possible. Yeah.
All right, so we're down here looking at the skid, and went through and checked the bogey wheels, or idler wheels, depending on who you talk to. Bearings in this one are pretty much smoked, that one pretty much smoked, and then we got two up here. This one is really cooked. That one's borderline, but since the rod's going to come out anyway, we're going to replace both of them. Pretty straightforward to take these out. Down here, you have a 13mm bolt there, and on the other side, and that undoes the axle rod there that traverses through both of them, and then that will come out. And then same thing for this one up here. We got a 13mm bolt here, and then same thing on the other side of the tunnel. This one will be a little trickier to take out because it's got track leaning on top of it. Traditionally, on newer stuff, I would wrap a ratchet strap around the whole suspension and compress it, basically to compress the suspension so that the track loosens up a little bit. I think this one I'll be able to sneak out just by pulling out the bolts and letting the thing drop down, and then I'll probably have to struggle a little bit getting it back in. But let's see what we can do with this bottom one first off.
All right, perfect. I got those two bolts out of there, and this actually came out really easily, so that was awesome. Just took the bolt out of each side, and things slid right out. So when you take these things out, you just gotta be careful. There's a lot of times there's like spacers and washers and stuff that go in different spots. So when you take them apart, just be mindful of that stuff so that you know how to put it all back together. Like for instance, there's a sleeve inside this channel where the bolt goes through it, so you just want to keep track of all that stuff so when you put it back together, you know where all of it goes. So we'll go ahead and take these spacers off either end of the axle rod here, and it looks like we're gonna we'll probably end up having to press the shaft out of the bearings just because they've been in there for so long. They're probably gonna be pretty well seized. Obviously they're not just gonna fall off the end of the rod there. So we'll press this out of both sides, and then once we get that apart, I don't know how easy it is to see with the camera there, but there is, yeah, so there's a snap ring here and a snap ring here. So once we get these pressed off, we'll go ahead and take the snap ring out with a pair of snap ring pliers, and we will go ahead and press the bearings right out of the wheels. These wheels are actually not in terrible shape. You do want to inspect these and make sure you don't have any big chunks of rubber missing. These aren't great. There is some dry rotting in the rubber. But for the kind of mileage this sled's going to see every year, I'm really not concerned about it. If I was going to be riding this thing, every weekend, then yeah, I would go ahead and replace these just for good measure. But
for now, we'll run them. Pretty easy to get the thing in and out anyway if I have to replace them in the future. So, all right, I went ahead and did the same thing for this one. This one I did end up having to put a little bit of upward pressure on the bottom of this with my hand just to support the weight of the track pushing down on it. I was able to just take those 2 bolts out of either side of that tunnel and drop this thing right out. So again, we're going to go ahead and slide these sleeves off. Once we get those off, looks like we're going to have to go ahead and do the same thing with this one. We'll probably have to support this in the press, and then we'll just give that a little bit of a nudge with the press, and these should slide right off. These look like they might be non-serviceable, which is kind of a shame now that I'm looking at them. Yep, I think these have to be replaced as an assembly, unfortunately. You can see the 2 halves of the wheel are riveted together, and there is no snap ring to remove the bearing on either side. So the bearing is caged on either side by the halves of the wheel, basically. So that, unfortunately, is going to have to get replaced as an assembly. I don't know if you can hear that, but that is no bueno. That will make a whole lot of noise while you're riding. So this one's definitely going to be replaced, and as long as they're not a ton of money, we're just going to go ahead and replace this one too, since we're already in here. Like we talked about earlier, these bearings and wheels from the other idler shaft here are not serviceable unless you want to drill out every single one of these things, take the bearing out, put a new one in, and then find a way to rivet it all back together. I don't really feel like doing that. So we got our trusty old catalog here, and it looks like Citation, not that you guys can probably read that, but Citation 78 to 79, 85 to 92. Mine doesn't actually fall within that year range, but it gives you the dimensions, the outside and inside dimension. So the outside dimension being here to here, and the inside dimension being the inside diameter of that bearing. So we have, 4.25 is outside, and inside is 0.625. And it gives you a position 6, and position 6 is up there against the bottom of the tunnel, which is exactly where these ones came from. So I am going to go ahead and get those ordered. Let's see. PD41671 is the automatic part number, if anybody's using automatic distributors. And yeah, not too expensive, 25 bucks a wheel. So not ideal. I'd like to be able to replace the bearings and keep things as original as possible, but for 25 bucks a piece, I'm just going to go ahead and order new ones. So I went ahead and popped some new bearings into these idler wheels. These were 6205 bearings. Super common bearing in snowmobile idler wheels. I had them right here on the shelf, so I was able to just throw those right in, clean up the inside of the surface on both wheels, clean up the snap rings, and I was actually able to just push the bearings right in with my thumbs. Given that they're plastic wheels, the press fit isn't super precise, so you can a lot of times just work them in with your thumb if they're brand new. So we need to get these back on this shaft now. Looking at this shaft, there's a teeny tiny shoulder on this shaft where the bearing presses up against. This shiny surface is where the bearing was riding. I cleaned this up a little bit with a Scotch-Brite, but it's such a tiny shoulder that I'd be worried about pressing it too far. So what we're going to do is just have to keep a really close eye on where the bearing lands on the shaft as we're putting it back together. The other thing we can do too is take the spacers that came off. There were collars that came off of either side from the outside of the wheels there, and we could use the collar as a measurement because the collar sat flush with the end of the shaft here. So either you can measure the distance from here to here and press it on to that precise measurement. You can use the collar or kind of just eyeball it. I'm going to probably eyeball it for the most part and then double check my measurement with the collar. So I got one quick little tech tip for you. If you're doing bearings and bogey wheels and you don't have a press, I know a lot of people at home don't have presses, and that's fine. You could you could take it to probably any reputable automotive shop near you and ask them to press them in for you. They would probably do it. Some of them would probably do it for free because it only takes a couple seconds. as well as usually a lot of marinas have a lot of different press tools for changing gear cases and stuff like that. There's a lot of press work involved. However, if you don't want to do any of that, you can pretty easily, especially with these plastic ones, this is off of another skid I'm working on in the meantime, but you can kind of get that started by hand, and then you flip it over, and then I'm going to take both my palms here, and I'm going to press down on it until it's flush, and then what I can do is I'll take it over to the vise, and I will show you a little trick over there. So you want to find yourself a socket that the outside diameter of the socket is as absolutely close to the same outside diameter of the bearing you're pushing on is. It's very important that you push on the outside race of the bearing whenever you're pressing anything, or doing it by hand like this. You always want to push on the outside race of the bearing. If it's a new bearing, if you're pressing out an old bearing, doesn't matter if you're replacing it. But if you're pressing in a new bearing, you absolutely always want to press on that outside race. So I got a socket here that almost perfectly matches that outside diameter. This is a 24 millimeter, 24 millimeter impact socket. So what we're going to do, it's going to be a little tricky here with one hand. And there we go. I just used the vise like a press. Very minimal effort. And was able to just wind that right in. I had the camera under my chin, so I couldn't talk at the same time. But you get the idea. And then just put your snap ring back in, and good to go. No press needed.
So we got our seat here. All we need to do is plug in our wiring harness for the tail light, and we will crawl under there and put some screws up into the bottom of the seat for now, and give this thing a good bath, and we should be good to go. Just get the bracket there lined up with the notch in the seat, and we want to make sure we plug this together real good so we don't have to take it back apart. Excellent. That kind of just lives right in there, and slides right up in there nice and tight. That's it. Pop some screws in from the bottom, and off to the races. That's all she wrote.
Oh yeah. There you have it. This is part 3 on the Skidoo Citation. Eric, let's just do a quick overview. What did we do to get this thing going?
Well, we, or I should say you, went through the carburetor, got that thing all put back together and running nicely. I replaced the primer the other day. We don't have a video of that. It's a super simple installation. Take 2 tubes off the back of it, unscrew the thing, and put 2 tubes back on. Really nothing to it. We replaced the fuel tank. We reupholstered the seat. We replaced the wood in the seat, I should say. Gave it a nice bath, cleaned everything all up, got the tail light fixed up, took some of the decals off of this thing that we didn't like, that somebody had kind of stuck all over it. We went through the skid a little bit, just replaced a couple bad bearings and bogey wheels and such. That's really about it. We came into this project not really knowing a lot about the sled. I bought it off an old-timer friend of mine that's well known in the area for having vintage sleds and having pretty nice stuff and taking good care of it. And this thing had been sitting in his garage for a questionable amount of years, and every time I had been over there, I'd been pestering him about buying it, and he swore up and down he was never getting rid of it. And one day he called me up and said, "Hey, I'm getting rid of that sled. You want it? And I said, I'll be there in 20 minutes. So that's how I came to own this thing, and I'm glad we finally got around to going through it and making it a running, working sled, and I'm really looking forward to taking it for a ride this weekend. So hopefully we get some trail time on it and get to see how she performs.
I will add some footage after this of us giving this a quick little test drive in the backyard. We're just currently waiting for the sun to come up to do that so we can get better footage of it. So I'll add that at the end, but otherwise, yeah, part 3, Citation's done. Now we're on to the next project. And you wait till you see these next projects coming up. They'll be out soon.
We're excited.
Absolutely.
It's going to be good.
See you in a few days.